Hello, friend. The mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from beneath 4 million cubic feet of solid granite, in the burning heart of the Yellowstone caldera. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. So, keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground, as Sumo and Smokestack connect your main brain vein to a higher plane. Are you ready? Stand by.
Good morning. Well, hello, guten morgen. Greetings from Greater Barbados. Hello.
You're in Barbados?
I'm in Greater Barbados, and I am calling for the immediate secession of the southern states to form a joint alliance with the Aztec power of Mexico and the Caribbean islands to form the mighty nation of the Golden Circle. Hello this morning.
Mighty nation of the Golden Circle.
But first, yes, that's my proposed new country. The Golden Circle. This was already proposed in times past in the olden days. Everybody knows about it. But first, we here at Maps are opening up a new store.
Sweet.
Did you know that?
No, this is news to me.
Yeah, it's a new store. We're going to have sporting equipment mostly. Boxing gloves, heavy bags, weights, that sort of thing, kettlebells. Would you like to hear some of the inventory?
Yes.
Okay, I've got a kettlebell here. It costs $13,000. We call it Julie.
Oh, that's a neat name.
Yeah, and then I have another one over here named Amber for $15,000.
Okay, they're kind of pricey. Did they come with any extras?
No, just then there's another one named Christine. She's a punching bag.
Oh, that was dark. That was dark.
I know. I was going down the Wayfair conspiracy.
I was too. Last night and then this morning, it was just Wayfair everything.
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, if for people that didn't caught up on it, there's some furniture store, and they sell items of furniture online that you can buy for exorbitant prices that have little girls' names. And then if you look up the barcode on some weird Russian website, it comes up with a profile of the kidnapped child that they're trafficking under the It's very weird and dark.
And a lot of the first names that these products were made after happened to coincide with the first names of missing girls. And they were, unique names. They weren't just Julie.
Yeah. It was like Jula Benovitz or something.
Right. Yeah.
Some Russian thing.
Yeah, it looks pretty bad. It looks pretty bad over at Wayfair right now.
I think my theory is that, this came out a few days after Ghislaine Maxwell was taken into custody.
Yeah, I find that an interesting coincidence.
I think Interpol was closing in on her, so she decided to come to America and start talking. And it's just to be clear, we're not actually opening a sporting equipment store.
No. I have had some calls for merch though, but probably just at normal prices.
Right, and there will be actual merch, not trafficked people.
Right.
As far as I know, no one in Maps is involved in human trafficking. As far as I know.
Yeah, I would say as far as I know, the same. I mean, some of our listeners.
Can you imagine being like a normal worker at Wayfair who just packs up furniture and you're like, what am I involved in all of a sudden?
Well, it's funny because I saw some people on Twitter saying, yeah, I used to work at Wayfair and there's no way that this was an error just because of the way things are put in there. And apparently, I didn't know that. I've never shopped on Wayfair before. I think maybe my wife has, but it's like Amazon where you can have all these different sellers selling through the platform. So you can have the same item for sale from different sellers, and then one person will have it listed for $13,000, and the other person will have it listed for 50.
Yeah,
you know,
that's the tip off. If you're buying a piece of furniture or a kettlebell or maybe a wah-wah pedal for your guitar, and it costs several mortgage payments, you might actually be buying a person, and that could be something you don't want to do.
I feel like some wealthy good person could just call the FBI and say, "Hey, if you guys want to try this, I'll I'll order one and just see what we get." And go ahead and nail it.
Why would some wealthy? I mean, the FBI has that money. They could just do it. That's the thing. The FBI must be in on this, all this debauchery to some degree, because the intelligence communities they're all over the internet.
Yeah.
There's probably one assigned to listen to our show right now.
Hi.
And his name is Robert.
Hi, Robert.
Hello, Robert.
Hope you're doing well.
Robert the Fed.
Yeah.
He is on. Well, did you ever go to the Black Hat Conference?
No.
You never went to the Black Hat Conference?
I don't go to conferences. There's just too many hot Chinese spies, and I don't want any part of that.
Yeah, they still do Black Hat. It wasn't. I don't think it's cool anymore. But back in like the early 2000s, it was a thing where people. It was a hacker convention, and now like everything, hackers conventions aren't cool anymore because the internet isn't cool anymore. But back when it was like Wild West, you could go to this place and everyone would go there and they'd show you like there'd be a little booth like, hey, look at my new way I discovered to steal credit card information. And people are like, oh, that's very interesting, and they compare notes about how to sell credit cards. And or there'd be one like, hey, here's a new workaround for figuring out people's login passwords. It's just fun stuff like that. And of course, you would never go with like any sort of electronic on you that had any login information or banking information on it, because it would be stolen.
Oh yeah, man. Wow.
Like if you went with like your laptop or your phone that was hooked up to your like Bank of America account or whatever, you're just asking for that to get taken. But anyway, they used to play a game there every year called Spot the Feds, where you would all try to vote on who you thought the feds were, because the feds would come and they wanted to learn the new ways people were stealing credit card numbers.
Right.
And what you would do is they'd always be like, look at my new way I invented of stealing credit card numbers that I invented, wink, just as a hobby, wink, that I will never actually use, so I cannot get in trouble. Right. And that was sort of the cover, because you didn't prove they actually did it. He was like, oh, they would always be like, oh, I discovered this security flaw for people to patch for safety.
Right.
That
was
like,
the Fed. The Fed was doing this?
Oh no,
everybody else. Okay.
Booths. Yeah. The people running the booths. Now, in the back, if you wanted to like buy something from people, you could either pay in money or you could pay in big lists of credit card numbers.
Oh, rad. Man, that was Wild West. Yeah,
it was a good time. But anyway, I don't think it's cool anymore, and all the cool people stopped going.
Yeah.
They still have it though. But yeah, I think because the feds are everywhere, so they had to know about this Wayfair stuff, and they just, someone in the FBI is probably in on it.
Do you think
not our Robert? Robert is cool.
I think we should send Robert a birthday card and like a basket of fruit.
Oh yeah.
I wonder what his birthday. Robert, if you can contact us by some, subtle, discreet way and let us know your birthday and your address, we'll send you. We'll send you a card and a basket of fruit on your birthday. Just
an unmarked Manila envelope.
Yeah, just real discreet. I don't want to get you in trouble, but just send us all your personal information so we can wish you well.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
Most spooks are evil people, but Robert is good.
Robert, I have good feelings about Robert.
The one listening to us, and here's the thing about Robert. Robert is actually a woman, but going by a code name, because you always want to, when you're a spook, you always want to make everything the opposite of the truth to make it harder to figure out.
Right, that's good.
So if you're a woman,
craft.
you want a man's name.
Yeah.
If you're a man, you use a woman's name. If you live in Arkansas, you say that you live in Idaho, because those are opposites. You know, the opposite of Arkansas is always Idaho.
But Robert, we need your real name and address, not your fake one.
Right, to send you the birthday card
for the fruit.
Yeah, right. But there's a lot of human trafficking in the world. It's very bad. So
when I asked you about this about 30 seconds before the show started, I was like, "What's your take?" And it was pretty much, "Yeah, definitely."
Well, it's just so obvious. Of course, that's what it is.
But I mean, it was very weird. I will say it was very weird, and I don't have. I try not to just immediately believe things like this.
Well, I don't immediately believe them either. Except that one has all the. I mean, it smells exactly like what you would do.
It looked pretty bad.
Yeah, it smells exactly like what you would do. There are some conspiracies where it's like, I don't know, and some are just like, oh yeah, that's pretty obvious. Because this one doesn't require any weird supernatural beings.
Yeah.
This one is just.
Well, I wonder if everybody's going to be disappointed if it ends up just being regular money laundering.
That might be. It might be regular money laundering. However, the great thing about it is, even if they come out and say it's just regular money laundering, then you can always just say, no, it's not. I don't believe you. And so you can always stick with your conspiracy theory no matter what. That's why it's a great belief system.
Well, that's that was kind of the way Pizzagate panned out. There was maybe some evidence of bad acting going on, but there was never enough to really close the deal, and then it all got hushed up, and everybody was left holding on to their original position, and nothing was ever resolved.
Well, I believe the Pizzagate thing only because before anybody knew anything about it, it was being immediately denounced all over the media.
Yeah,
which is how you know something's true.
Yeah,
if no one knows anything about it yet, and they're already coming out and saying it's a hoax, that just means that it's true, and and people are covering up for it.
Honestly, it was the Podesta emails that did it for me.
Yeah,
and whenever I talk to somebody who was all, oh, Pizzagate's stupid, why do you believe that stuff? And I say, have you read the Podesta emails that they're talking about? Have you just sat down and read them? How weird they are? And they said, well, no. I said, well, you should read that, but nobody ever reads them.
Nobody reads anything. Nobody reads anything. Reading, people don't actually read.
Yeah, I know.
This is true. Like I was watching Delicious Tacos talk about his book sales.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he had almost 5,000, and people were like, that's all? He was like, people have a really overinflated view of how often people buy books.
That's a shame.
Like J.K. Rowling is a humongous outlier.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't even buy her books anymore because everyone just watches TikTok videos. And there's no reading going on in America. I mean, people rarely read to begin with before constant online video. But now people don't read at all.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid back before the internet, I didn't read much at all.
Yeah.
Never for leisure. I mean, I do now.
Right.
Which seems kind of backwards, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, I mean, like how many people sit down and like read a novel?
I don't know.
There are people that do it, but it's not the majority of the population.
We should run a poll among our audience. How many of them read novels? Maybe say like one, even if you've read one novel a year.
Yeah, one novel a year.
I feel like that's something.
There's just so many entertainment options now.
Right. And they're easy.
And a lot of novels suck anyway. And so finding the good ones from the bad ones.
Yeah.
And then someone comes along and tries to convince you to read Herman Melville.
Mm-hmm.
And then you pick up Moby Dick, and then like 50 pages into him describing the creaking of the deck. You're like, oh my goodness, the 1800s were a bad time for novels because there was a huge leisure class from the Industrial Revolution and stuff. They had nothing to do all day, much like people now, except they didn't have TikTok videos. So they just sat down and wrote by hand where you couldn't backspace any of your nonsense. Page after page after page of these giant novels. Like, Tale of Two Cities.
That book is great, though.
Moby Dick. I mean, it's good, but that size novel was the standard, and most of them are not A Tale of Two Cities.
Yeah.
That was the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And, now if something lasts more than 15 seconds, it's just too long.
Yeah. Well, no, I was trying to get a summary video on the Wayfair thing this morning, and I found one, and it said, I'm gonna break it all down in 2 minutes. And my first thought was, oh man, 2 minutes.
2 minutes?
Man.
Come on. Just
I got all day. I'm busy.
I gotta watch more TikTok videos.
I don't have TikTok. Do you have TikTok?
I don't have TikTok either. We should get a TikTok.
I don't know. I draw the line at Twitter. I can barely handle that.
We have to TikTok. To maintain anonymity, we'll wear Lucha Libre masks.
Do you have one I could borrow? I don't have one.
Yeah, I have several Lucha Libre masks.
Okay, that does not surprise me.
I have, I think, 7?
Yeah, 7.
I think I have 7.
Okay. Were they handmade on Etsy?
No, I got them actually from Mexico.
Sweet.
I think. Well, 2 of them are just sort of like the masks they hand out. You can buy at Mexican pro wrestling events. Like for merch.
Yep.
And then the others are like handmade cloth made for reasons I don't understand.
Interesting.
That I have come upon. But I have them. We can wear them. Do you want green or like yellow? I think there's 2 that are green.
Mm-hmm.
There's a yellow, a blue. There's a bright red, and then there's 2 pink. Is that 7? Something like that. Anyway, you can choose. I'll show you, and we'll TikTok.
Okay.
And all of our listeners will TikTok with us, and we'll just be TikToking back and forth.
It sounds awful.
It does. But it doesn't sound. You know what sounds better?
What?
Is the golden circle.
Is this have something to do with your fixation on the Gulf of Mexico?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it does. But it's not mine. This is the thing I'm trying to get people to see, is that I didn't make this up. Because literally, the southern United States are Greater Barbados.
What?
I know. People have no, because people. So there's been a lot of talk recently about the Confederate flag and and I was like, I bet most people don't even realize why there was a North-South divide to begin with. They just like, oh, there were some southern states and they had a different way of doing things for some reason. But here's the trick about America, you see. Below Virginia, and even to some extent Virginia, it was colonized not moving from New England down, but moving from the Caribbean up.
Oh.
Yeah, no one realizes this. Because forever, Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492.
He did.
Right, so that's basically 1500. And the Civil War doesn't kick off till the 60s, 70s?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you've got 350 plus years of people coming to the New World. And if they were going to North America, almost all of if they were going to the north, they were all going to basically New England.
Mm-hmm.
But if you weren't going to New England, you were almost 100% going to the Caribbean.
Okay.
Because that's where Columbus landed, first of all, and that was the easiest part for ships to go in and out. Lots of places to farm. You can move. You can go anywhere. You can go all the Caribbean islands. You can go all around the Gulf into Mexico, all of the southern states, into the north of South America. It's great for shipping and trading.
Mm-hmm.
Right, you were always going to the Caribbean. This is the age of the Pirates of the Caribbean, right? This is, which gets totally overlooked, but there's like 350, longer than the U.S. has been a country, was people coming from the old world into the Caribbean and then sort of migrating up into North America.
What a time to have been alive.
I know. And they even called it, they even called it getting Barbados. So like because there were two groups of people that were brought over here involuntarily.
Mm-hmm.
And actually most of the settlement of the Caribbean was involuntary.
Yeah.
But it was the Africans, obviously, but also the Scots-Irish,
mm-hmm.
who were brought over as indentured servants after Cromwell conquered Ireland,
mm-hmm.
right? And they just took the Irish and they said, "Do you go?" And really, people get offended because there's all this grievance politics.
Yeah.
But the difference between the indentured servitude and the slave was at many times in that history, in that 350 years, very thin.
Mm-hmm.
It was very, that when the Irish people are like, we were also oppressed, they have as much of a claim to that as most people.
Oh yeah, there's pictures of Irish people stacked in chicken cage style shipping containers.
And so they were brought over here to the and so from the earliest days, you had, so that's what they would, people in Ireland say, what happened to Seamus? Where's Seamus? And someone, and Mrs. McClarney would be over there saying her rosary, and she'd say, "Oh, he got to Barbados. Why did I? So have some Lucky Charms." And then and then that would mean that he had gotten taken by the English.
So when you say taken by the English, how did you end up in the clutches of English slave traders as an Irishman?
Well, so you would have to, the way a lot of it worked, well, one, if you committed any sort of crime, which they heavily criminalized a lot of things to get people.
Right.
But two, they purposely made Ireland very poor for a lot of people, and then people would just sell themselves into it to not starve to death.
Okay. Yeah.
And so Mrs. McClarney would be like, Seamus got Barbados, and that just was a general term. Barbados was like the main entry point into the Caribbean.
Right.
And so, but you would go there, but then you might end up on like some other island. You might end up on Cuba or Haiti or any of the other ones. Out there farming.
Right.
And that's just the way it went. And then when they did get free, either them or their children or maybe their grandchildren got their freedom, they wanted their own land too, naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't any because those Caribbean islands are very small. And so what they would do is they'd get on a boat and they would either go up to Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, or they'd go down to like Brazil.
Yep.
And that is why that's why really the plantation model was shared in Brazil and the South and the Caribbean, because it was all one sort of culture, distinct in almost every way from the New England America.
Yep. And I know the Scots-Irish kind of settled Appalachia and the southern states, and really that adds a lot of context to the whole north-south animosity, because to those guys, New England was the land of the Anglo slave traders that enslaved their ancestors, right?
Right. And I don't want to be like one of these people that's like, we was also kings and slaves.
Right.
Right. That's weird. But it does add a lot of context when people are like, I mean, the Carolinas, North and South Carolina, are a direct offshoot of Barbados.
Oh.
There were some lords from England that were rewarded by Charles II for their loyalty to the monarchy in the Civil War, which the monarchy won. And so then he gave them the Carolinas, and they said, well, we want to make this profitable. So they went down to Barbados, and they got people that were, wealthy plantation owners there to move to the Carolinas with them and just transport the whole model
right
to the Carolinas. And so that's why, like, Charleston and Savannah, Georgia, and those sorts of places have a feel very Caribbean style architecture and city layout. And it's also why they had a lot of pirates.
Yeah.
Because it's all that. And like a lot of these, and the pirates would come from people like that were, a lot of them were Irish. Some of them were black. Some of them were, these people that were enslaved or indentured servitudes that escaped. They'd steal a boat and they just start shooting people. It was a wild time. It was a very wild. I mean, you want to talk about an interesting bit of history. No one ever talks about this 300-year span of the Caribbean, but people were just doing anything.
Yeah,
anything and everything you could imagine. And this connection, and actually, George Washington had a house in Barbados.
I didn't know that.
That's how strong the connection was. George Washington spent a significant amount of time in his youth in Barbados, and that's where he would. That's where he learned a lot of stuff about his own plantation back in Virginia. So the connection is very strong, and in fact, I mean, even just sort of climatologically, Southern people are like jungle Anglos or jungle Celts. I mean, it's true. Like that if you've ever been hiking in America, in the different spots of America, right? Like you go out to the Northwest and you go outside to the woods and it's like, oh, look, I'm going to walk in the woods. And that's actually possible. Yeah. Because between the trees, there is space. Whereas if you go to the southern states, between the trees, there's just like an overgrowth of bramble and brush and vines and thorns.
It's true.
And you can't walk through anything. Any step must be accompanied by a machete. And then your face is just covered in all these weird bugs and giant spiders and snakes.
Yep.
And it's not overly different from the Amazon rainforest.
That's what it's like if you go 100 yards from my house, maybe not even that, 50 yards from my house in any direction, what you just described is exactly your experience.
Yeah, I know. Like, and New England forests are very different too. You can go out, like you can go hiking in the Adirondacks, and it's very pleasant. Yeah. You cannot go hiking in like Bayou La Patrie. No. Or whatever. It's like this is not a pleasant, and that's why it has both the cultural distinction and also they really are jungle people. I mean, all right, I looked this up. And the 6 of the 7 top states with rainfall per year. Okay. 1, Louisiana, 2, Mississippi, 3, Alabama, 4, Florida, 5, Tennessee, 6, Hawaii, and then 7, Georgia.
Yeah, I believe that.
So 6 of and it's just a little. It's like it's almost a rainforest. It could be considered a rainforest, and actually the Alabama watershed. People don't know about the Alabama watershed.
Tremendous amount of water.
You want to talk about some biodiversity and like weird. And some people have called it America's Amazon. Yeah, it's crazy. It is like there's. I looked some of this up too because I wanted to make the point about how they're jungle people. Right. Okay. There are more species of turtle in Alabama than there are in all of the Amazon rainforest.
Believe.
There are 1/3 of all freshwater fish species in the U.S. live in Alabama.
Also believe, yeah.
1/3. There are 84 crawfish species in Alabama, and then California, which is 3 times as large, has 9. Yeah. Right. So more than 9 times. It's insane how much is just waterways and like vines and birds going. Oh yeah. When you walk down through there, and so then you've got so the north-south divide is not only a difference in economies, where the North was going towards industrialization and the South was still holding the plantation farm model, right?
Right.
It was not only that, it was also like, New Englander. It was also like Anglos that liked, to have a nice fall foliage, and turkeys, and like to put on sweater vests,
right?
Versus like jungle Celts.
Yeah,
that was the.
Yep.
And so, and it really, and this was even recognized. That's the point. Is that before the Civil War, when all of this history about how things happened was lost, and it just became like, I don't know, there was, for some reason, half the country had plantations and slavery and indentured servitude, and half didn't. And people are like, well, I don't know how that happened, and we'll never discuss it. How did that come to be? I don't know. It's just no one ever discusses anything about how things happen. But they understood that, and this is why there was such a thing as the KGS, which is what all of our MAPS members are also a part of, the Knights of the Golden Circle. It was a secret society in the 1800s. I think it was they declared on Independence Day they formed 1854. And the Knights of the Golden Circle was a Southern secessionist movement who their thing was, after we secede, then we're going to annex Mexico.
Fantastic.
And they had a proposed, you can look up the map, a proposed plan of their nation. It was basically a big ring around the Gulf of Mexico. They were going to take over Venezuela. They were going to take over Colombia. They were going to take over the Caribbean. They were going to take over Mexico. And they're like, and this will be great. We'll call it the Golden Circle, which is a terrible name for a country, but that's what they want. That's what they were going with. Which I think we should still do.
I mean, it sounds awesome.
I'm not proposing we forcibly annex Mexico. This should be a voluntary thing, obviously.
We can really sell it, though, I think.
We can really sell this. I mean, the southern United States merging with Mexico and Venezuela would be fantastic. Just from a changing things up perspective.
Yeah.
In fact, Cuba was going to join the Confederacy. There was only for technical reasons they didn't. So this whole thing, and then after the war was over, many of the defeated Confederates went to Brazil, where mostly to Sao Paulo, and they started a city there called Americana, which you can still go to, and they have a Confederate festival every year in Brazil.
Which is bizarre because you don't even have those in America anymore.
I know. They have a Confederate festival where they all get together in like Southern Cotillion dress and like big hoop skirts. Except that they really do. And they speaking all Spanish. Right. And then they dance around in like a Southern Cotillion sort of spinning, fancy ball dance. While they eat fried chicken and listen to Alan Jackson.
That sounds awesome.
They really do that.
I might have to make that one of these years.
Yeah, it's very weird how it all happened. But my point is, prior to the Civil War, most of the Southerners recognized themselves as an extension of the Caribbean up rather than New England down. And this is why American history is so schizophrenic today, because like when the Black Lives Matter folks are like, we built this country. A lot of America looks around, they say, well, that's not true. There weren't very many blacks even in New England, like ever. Yeah. Or still today, really, as a portion of the population. But and so if you go with New England history, like the history of America that is the standard one taught in school, which is the New England centric one of Pilgrims and Plymouth Rock and Ben Franklin having spectacles and then having sex in his basement and murdering the people and burying them under his house. Yeah. If you do that, it's like, really? But from the Caribbean up perspective model,
Mm-hmm.
that is true, right? They were here from the beginning, as were the Irish. I mean, they weren't the only ones that built it,
Sure.
obviously, but the black people were here from the very beginning of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so then it's like, and it also, and you know, they've everywhere, and there were also Indians. The Caribbean part was always much more, had a lot more different stuff going on.
So really, if BLM is going to be intellectually honest, they're going to have to embrace
It need to be a Southern secessionist movement,
a Confederate sort of position.
Yeah, they do, and I support that. I think that we should have an Afro Jungle Celt alliance.
Yeah, that would be sweet.
Along with the Hispanics.
We'd be unstoppable.
And we should form this new society, this new country. But yeah, because it's like, you know, there's really three different American histories. There's the New England one.
Mm-hmm.
There's the one that comes out of the Caribbean, and then there's the one on the West Coast, which really had nothing to do with either of them. And that's where more of your Indian grievances comes from.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of that, honestly, was from the Spanish.
Yeah.
It's not even the you know, that when the English moved in, the Spanish had already done their work on the Indians.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, in large part. So then you merge all this together and you say it's American history, and it's like, well, none of it. People in New England are like, well, I don't feel like we attacked the Indians that much. And then people in Washington State are like, I don't think black people built Portland. And then black people are like, you know, why don't we get more respect? We've been here from the beginning, and they have, but it's just in this different section.
Yeah.
So there's three different histories, and you put them all together, and it gets very schizophrenic. But really, you should acknowledge, like, well, it was, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, Greater Barbados. I'm proposing it. There we will have all of our furniture stores. Our online furniture stores will be based out of Barbados.
Mm-hmm.
And online sports equipment.
Sounds legit.
Yeah. You know, you really could. If you, this is the thing. People always talk about, like, secessionist movements.
Mm-hmm.
And, like Scotland does this. They're like, aren't we a bit wee to be our own country? Eh? And that's why they were like, let's not vote for independence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because they're like, we're too small. What do you mean? It's like, no, guys, look, you got to use your imagination.
Well, their will for independence was broken a long time ago. Sorry.
I know. But like, let's say take the smallest state. What's the small? Rhode Island? Is that the smallest state?
Probably.
I think. You take Rhode Island and you make it its own independent country.
Mm-hmm.
You could be the wealthiest thing imaginable, because all you do is you just change your laws around and say, look, any business that comes over here, we're not going to look too hard at your taxes.
Yeah.
And
that's what the Caribbean does now. Yeah, in Switzerland.
Yeah, that's how Switzerland is the capital of banking.
Yeah.
Is they're like, oh yeah, open up a thing here. And you know, if there's some insider trading going on, we're not going to look too hard. Just send us the tax revenue, and then we just won't look. And then you could do all sorts of things with a small land area with independent laws. You could be billionaires.
Right, but I don't think Rhode Island could pull that off, because Switzerland has the Alps and skiing, you know, and people with horns and lederhosen and stuff. Yeah. And then the Caribbean obviously has beautiful beaches and tropical stuff. Rhode Island doesn't have any of that.
Rhode Island is dumb. It's faking gay. To all of our Rhode Island listeners, you
should move.
You should move, because just being there is turning you.
It's breaking you down.
It's breaking you down.
Yeah.
Just being there is bad.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we're all Knights of the Golden Circle now. For whatever reason, the 1800s, everyone in secret society wanted to call themselves knights. Like the Ku Klux Klan had the knights thing, and then the Knights of Columbus, and then the Knights of...
Well, that's rad. We need that's due for a comeback.
Everyone wanted to be some sort of knight. And
maybe our first merch line can be the new Knights of the Golden Circle.
ooh.
And we can update the logo a bit, you know.
Right. And we'll just start memeing. We'll meme the making the Gulf of Mexico one big country.
Make the Gulf of Mexico great again. And
yeah.
yes. This is going to be great. I'm going to get on Adobe Illustrator after the show and start working on some.
There's a lot of debate about how the Gulf of Mexico came into existence.
Now, you were going on yesterday about something. I want to hear this.
Well, it has been said that perhaps the Gulf of Mexico is man-made.
Please explain.
Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. There are people that say the Gulf of Mexico is man-made.
Yeah, but how would you do that?
Well, I guess you could just dig it.
Pretty big project.
It'd be a huge project. There are people that are like, well, we did the Panama Canal. Why not just bigger? And it's like, it's a lot bigger.
Yeah.
It's a lot bigger.
I mean, maybe if it were an asteroid crater and somebody just like dug out a little
theory.
Okay.
The other big theory is that the Gulf of Mexico, and this is actually the theory that's bandied about in universities. Mm-hmm. This isn't like a fringe theory. Is that the Gulf of Mexico is basically the impact site of the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs.
I thought that was supposed to be Hudson Bay.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, see, they argue about where it was, but there's some academics that think like, oh, the Gulf of Mexico was caused by this impact. So I don't know whether you want to believe it was dug out by people, which I think is a bit of a far fetch because it's pretty big.
Can I just believe that God made it?
No, you got to come up with some weird.
Why does every circular hole in the earth have to have an explanation?
I don't know, but speaking of circular holes, isn't Florida super cursed? Did you see all those things about sinkholes?
I mean, they have a lot of sinkholes.
Florida is an awful place.
It is.
It's a cursed land,
mm-hmm.
where the ground just may swallow you whole.
Yeah,
and there are alligators.
Although Mexico too has the same problem.
Did you see there where that fella he held up a Wendy's with an alligator in Florida?
So I made a joke yesterday about Florida man holding up a bank with an alligator, thinking that surely that hasn't been done.
Oh no! That was I didn't see that. That was a real thing. This guy, he pulled up to the Wendy's thing and he made his order.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets up to the thing and he's like, "Give me your money." And he has no visible weapon. And so the lady's like, and this is you can watch this on the YouTubes. Because there's it was caught on a little security camera. And he's like, she's like, "Well, no, sir, I'm not gonna give you the money." He reaches around in the back of his little sedan to the back seat and lumberingly, but with surprising speed,
mm-hmm.
whips around a large alligator and pokes the head of it through the window at the woman. It says,
"Put all your money in the alligator."
Give me your money. And then she instead of complying because she has an alligator thrust in her face, she jumps backwards and screams. And he says, he screams something inarticulate and hurls the alligator into the drive-through window. And it's like, that's Florida.
That is Florida.
I have to go to Florida semi-regularly for various, and it's everything in Florida is sort of like that. It's you cross into the Florida line and immediately there are homeless people walking just shirtless.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, everywhere
in the sun, everywhere,
mm-hmm.
And everything there is built. Everyone in Florida thinks one of two things. One, they think, I will move out of Florida within 5 years, and they never do
mm-hmm.
because they're trapped there, like some purgatory.
Yep.
Or they think, I am going to retire and die in Florida. And so if you live, there are communities that are built sort of nice, but for old people. and everything else is built with the intention of it being gone in 5 years, but it's still up 20 years later.
Yep.
And everything is extremely transient, and just there's this strip malls built for like 1 month's purpose that are still there, being run by some like Cuban drug lord.
Yeah.
A year, several years later, and that's just all of Florida, and it has a nice charm about it. And there's also the Everglades and the heavy swamp people.
I mean, St. Augustine is nice.
Yeah, that's true.
The old part, but yeah, you're right. It's almost, the whole state is almost a shanty town.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I think that Florida, someone pointed out that the America's coronavirus response was all messed up because people in America are ungovernable and they don't listen to anything.
This is true. Yeah.
And I was like, that's a sign of a healthy culture when people are ungovernable and they're just doing whatever and throwing alligators through windows.
Yeah.
Because would you rather live there or like somewhere where everyone's like, Snell, step in line, everyone, everyone's just complying with everything. That's just my main issue with all the mask stuff is that it's boring. Like, someone do something different.
Yeah.
Like someone get in a car and throw an alligator at somebody. And that's the beauty of that one. It's not even that dangerous. Alligators are not as, people confuse alligators and crocodiles. Alligators will kill you sometimes, maybe. But in general, alligators are pretty docile.
Yeah, they're chill.
But a crocodile, on the other hand, is very aggressive.
Yeah.
But alligators are, I mean, don't provoke an alligator. But usually they will not bother you if you're just in the swamp. They're just over there being a big lizard that's sunning in the sun.
Yeah, that's pretty much all they do. Yeah. Yeah,
that's all they're doing, and they're not going to, they're not going to harass you. But people get confused with all the crocodiles. Caimans, same way. Caimans are like little angry crocodiles that'll bite you, but they can't kill you.
Right.
They can just mess you up.
Like the Chihuahua of the big lizards.
Right. It's just the same as with dogs. It's just, the big ones are mean, the little ones are mean, and the in between ones are chill. It's the same with dogs. It's probably the same with every animal. Like bears. Polar bears, very mean.
Yeah.
Well, I guess black bears are sort of chill, because grizzly bears are very aggressive.
What's a small bear? Honey bear?
What now?
What's a small bear though that's mean?
See, that's what my theory immediately fell apart on the second species I chose.
Well, raccoons are called washing bears, so maybe, and they can be mean. Yeah.
And panda bears are chill. Did you know that there's reasonable hope that the California grizzly is still alive in Mexico?
Really?
Way up high in the mountains, there have been consistent reports from the past couple of years of bears, which supposedly don't live in Mexico, of bears being seen and of farm animals being taken in a very sort of aggressive manner. And so people think maybe the California grizzly is still in these isolated pockets. And I think we need a MAPS expedition to go find the California grizzly.
You want to go to the mountainous regions of Mexico in the Hinterboonies to look for a grizzly bear?
I do. And we have many Latin American listeners, I've noticed. When I look at our little map of where listeners come from.
I'm not trying to dog on Mexico, but that sounds like the most dangerous thing we could possibly do.
I know, and it's going to be great. But imagine how cool it'll be if we rediscover the California grizzly.
I mean, that could put us on the map.
Yeah, the maps on the map. So,
yeah.
So, if any of our Latino brothers want to lead this expedition, because we need a native Spanish speaker. I speak poquito Spanish, just a little bit of Spanish, but I don't speak enough to organize an expedition in a Spanish speaking country,
right?
Or enough to bribe cartels.
I would feel so awkward trying to bribe a cartel. I would totally fumble it.
Oh, well, see, I think what you got to do is because they have cash and stuff, but you could be like, listen, I got this long list of credit card numbers. If you guys want to get in on that game.
I wouldn't know. I'd probably offer him a carton of cigarettes or something, thinking this was, the Berlin Wall, and they would just shoot me.
Well, I think the cartels are there's definitely an angle of the cartels where they like worship Santa Muerte, and there's like a devil worshiping aspect.
Oh yeah,
but a lot of your street cartel guys are just like your drug dealers over here. Pretty chill, except when they have problems.
Yeah.
So as long as you get along with them and you don't appear to be someone they could kidnap for a lot of money.
Okay.
Which I don't think either of us appear to be someone we could kidnap for a lot of money.
I'll leave my Rolex at home.
Yeah. But I wanted to talk about your new your COVID theories.
Oh, mercy!
You put into a nice document. Smokestack has developed brand new COVID theories.
I have
based around COVID being really a fungus.
Well, it's not exactly. So
Loki Julianus put forth this at some point early on too.
He did. He kind of threw out a little breadcrumb of an idea about a lot of this stuff looks like a fungal disease.
Yes, it does.
Especially in the severe symptomology. And I saw him doing that, and the little kernel stuck in my brain for the last 3 months. And I started reading about different fungal stuff. I wasn't really getting anywhere. And then I was actually researching something else entirely and stumbled upon the P. girovickii organism, which I'll get into in a little second here.
Okay.
But there's a few problems I feel with this, the explanation that COVID is the manifestation of a single viral infection. And I'm going to try to compact this as much as I can. So one, unpredictable outcomes for people of all age groups. Even among young people, some people get it really bad, end up in the hospital. Some people don't even know they have it. Right. Typically with a virus, your symptomology is pretty consistent, person to person. Two,
that's true. You don't have like one person having a cold and like having the sniffles,
right,
and another person like bleeding out of his eyeballs.
Yeah, but
that range of symptoms is something that's happening with this COVID stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bizarrely wide range of symptoms. Also, the particular issue of your lungs being packed with a sticky granular mucus and you die of lack of oxygen because you can't get any air through your lungs. That's not really typically a viral thing. That's more of a bacterial or fungal thing.
Because just from a mechanical standpoint, bacteria are large things that secrete stuff, and they multiply and form goop.
Right. They metabolize things.
And so do fungi. But viruses don't form giant balls of goop.
Right, because a virus doesn't have a metabolic process, like a bacteria or fungi do. So it's really like the goop is the poop of the thing, and you can't have poop without metabolic processes. Also, the COVID appears to respond to very strange treatments in ways that we don't understand. And I'm specifically thinking about hydroxychloroquine, which, despite what they tell you on CNN, there are a number of studies that show it quite effective in preventing the severe symptoms. Also, ivermectin and Madagascar, as I've mentioned before, is using Artemisia derivatives for the prevention of severe COVID symptoms. There's also some people will be just sniffling for 2 weeks and then all of a sudden they'll crash and die, and other people will get it and immediately become sick. And I'm mostly speaking about the severe cases. I'm leaving out the mild cases for reasons that'll be clear in a minute. And then there's a large and growing number of asymptomatic cases and a falling case fatality rate. If you go, it's funny because the graphs they're showing now, showing the southern states like with these big spikes. If on the same scale you add the timeline of New York, the New York death spike is just, it dwarfs everything to the point of all the other graphs look like statistical noise.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even on the same scale what happened in New York with what's happening, and they're now wigging out about happening in the southern states. It's not even the same category of thing. This is a numbers game, and we'll also kind of get back to that in a second. And so I was researching and came across this organism, Pneumocystis jirovecii, Jarovecii. Was originally it was discovered by the Chagas disease, and they thought it was a parasitic organism for first for a few reasons. One, because it responds to antiparasitical treatments, which is kind of weird for a fungus. In the same way that COVID does. And let's see here. If you take on an idea that the COVID syndrome is the product of two organisms, one, the virus, SARS-CoV-2, and two, some sort of fungus, which I propose is this specific one, a lot of this weird inconsistencies start making a lot of sense. So, for example, weird timelines of sickness. If you were to pick up this fungus and you're a normal, healthy person, you would never know. In fact, in some areas of the world, up to 50% of the population has colonies of this fungus in their lung tissue. Okay?
Okay.
And that can persist there for months sometimes. And so under my idea, if you were to have this, you don't know it. You're actually able to transmit it to other people and not know it. Mm-hmm. But then you end up with SARS-CoV-2 also. What the SARS-CoV-2 virus is going to do primarily is destroy your lymphocyte count. That's part of your immune system that takes care of things like this and would keep a P. jirovecii infection under control and in its latent state. So if you get the SARS virus, your lymphocyte count starts dropping, then the severity of the first infection of the fungus becomes apparent. And if that continues and your lymphocyte count drops down below 400 per microliter, then you're really in trouble. Then you start doing this classic COVID lungs filled with junk. And there's all sorts of similarities in fact, they're almost identical. The disease PCP pneumonia, which is the classic disease caused by P. jirovecii in immunocompromised people, mainly aged patients and transplant patients. The symptomology and the chest imagery on CT scans and chest x-rays and stuff, it's one for one. It's identical what happens between these two things.
Too. It's very similar. I mean, I'm not a radiologist, but you don't have to be a radiologist to be like, those two look very much the same.
Well, radiology uses a lot of jargon to describe what they're seeing so they can accurately communicate the visual ideas to each other. Right. And it's the exact same jargon. So the condition of this fungus in an immunocompromised person is classically called PCP pneumonia. And if you look at the description of the radiology of PCP pneumonia and severe COVID, it's identical.
Yeah.
And so if the virus, which has been shown to be very virulent and spreading very quickly, and we're getting more positive tests of asymptomatic people, so the infection rate is going down, I propose that we noticed the disease because it was circulating in a place that also had a high rate of colonization of this fungus among the population. So densely populated area, old buildings with poor ventilation, lots of poverty, lots of close quarters living, lots of public transport, that kind of stuff. Where you would have where it would make sense that there were a lot of fungal issues. So when a virus hits that, all these symptoms become expressed in the COVID syndrome, and there's this big blow up like happened in New York. But then the virus keeps spreading outside of that area and leaves the regional fungal infection behind. And so as the virus spreads to areas that don't have the same fungus issues, you have a lot of asymptomatic cases and a lot of people getting tested positive that don't even know they were sick because they didn't have both organisms.
Right.
So
I think that makes a lot of sense, especially because it's like, why would it spread? Like the hospitals became the hot spot.
Yeah. Well, there is a lot of precedent for hospital-based transmission. In fact, kidney transplant clinics really had a bunch of problems with this for a period till they figured it out, is that the hospital staff would just pass this fungal infection around among themselves. None of them would ever know they were sick. They weren't really sick. They were just had a latent infection.
Right.
But because it's a fungus, you're exhaling the spores. And so they would exhale it. The patients getting operated on would inhale it. Because they're having a transplant, they're on anti-rejection meds, which suppresses your immune system. And so they would have low lymphocyte counts as a result of those medications. Then they would get PCP pneumonia. And people couldn't figure out, like, where is this coming from? And it turns out it's coming from the staff in many cases.
That's the thing, is like a fungus doesn't respond to the same sanitation procedures.
Correct.
As a virus or a bacteria does.
Right.
So spores can sit in a little bit of Clorox bleach for a minute. You know, and like it can't sit in a bath of it.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, like they are more they travel. They're less communicable. Right. But they're more hardy.
Yeah. They're much more hardy, and they can blow on the wind. And if you really want to put on your tinfoil hat, you know, if somebody were, say, using this as a bioweapon, it would be very targetable, because it doesn't matter if the virus is spreading around. You wait until you get good virus surveillance in the area you want to target, and then you just blow a bunch of these spores into the wind, which for a long time they couldn't culture in the lab when it was very hard to study this organism. But I think about 10 years ago or so, some scientists figured out how to culture it in the lab, and so now theoretically it can be mass produced. But that's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down.
That's a brilliant idea, though, for a bioweapon, is you have a two-stage approach.
Yep. It's a lot more targetable.
But then if you don't want to target your people, right, then you hit local areas with something that doesn't spread very quickly in a geographic region, like a fungus.
Yep.
Like it's hard, like a fungus, fungal blooms will happen in a local area.
Yep. It's a very local thing.
It's a brilliant way. If they're not doing this, they should be doing this as a weapon research.
And you could also put your own population on PCP pneumonia prophylaxis, which is very easy to do and is well established through the care of AIDS patients since the 90s. And it's something that we know how to do. And so I've spent the last couple months researching this. Maybe I'll put the paper up on the website if anybody wants to read it, because I would like to talk to some medical professionals about this. And I've been unsuccessful thus far. But I think the binary theory of COVID syndrome would explain a lot, but it would also open up a lot of important opportunities for more effective treatment.
Right.
And if you're treating this thing correctly, it could be not a problem anymore, and people would stop telling us to wear masks all the time and doing other stupid things.
Well, it just plainly doesn't make sense. Like, you don't even have to be a doctor to be like, okay, so a lot of people that get it, they don't ever experience anything, and then like some small portion that has there's no like obvious connection between these people. Mm-hmm. It just devastates.
Yep.
For some reason, and then it's like in these little pockets that poof up and then die down real quickly after a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make any sense. Like that's not how other infections work.
Yeah.
Right. So there's something strange going on here that everyone's just overlooking, because like when it was like and I would always bring this up to people, and they'd be like, oh, they just totally dismiss it. It's like, okay, yeah, the thing that happened with Italy was pretty bad. Mm-hmm. Iran.
Yep.
The Wuhan itself, and then New York, basically. And it's like, well, what about all the other major cities?
Yeah.
Why didn't it go off in Tokyo? Why not Mexico City? Why not like this? If it operates the way a virus does, it should have, and everyone just blew that off. It's like, what? You can't just ignore the fact that what you're claiming is the problem doesn't actually occur, except in some places. Mm-hmm. That must mean there's some unknown cause at play.
Yeah.
Right. And they never, ever have addressed this.
And Tokyo, since you brought up Tokyo, they have some of the best public health infrastructure and public hygiene infrastructure in the world.
They do. But the Japanese are ubermensch.
They're special people.
They're special people.
So I'll put the paper up on mapsoc.org on on this post for this episode, so people can read it if they want, and contact me if you have any questions about it. I'm trying to develop the theory a little bit better, but I think I'm onto something. But
I think you're onto something too. I think Maps is doing great science. We're going to solve the COVID issue and rediscover the California grizzly bear.
It's funny, we're always talking about anybody can do science, but I picked something that I have zero ability to test. It's very frustrating. But here's the thing about this. There's a PCR test for P. girovecchii, and a treating physician could test this theory in 2 days for, very little money.
Well, you could test it if you were willing to go to the wall and go get infected with COVID and then inhale some of these spores.
Here's the thing. It's because in the world of big company, corporate managed hospitals and doctors who are afraid to veer from the protocol, if I asked for this test, I probably would not be given it in most hospitals in my area.
Oh, no. I was just saying you could get both of them and see if you got really sick.
Oh. I don't think I'm going to do that.
Like, infect yourself with the spores and the other and just see.
Yeah, but, I have through this research, if I do get it, I know how I want to be treated. It's just, am I going to be able to get that treatment or not? But I will add, I recently found that Brigham and Women's Hospital, part of their protocol, their protocol is made public on their website, and part of their protocol is if there are signs of secondary infection, assume this organism and treat accordingly. So I'm not the first person to think of this. I think it's just not being widely considered.
And it people just it annoys me to no end when so-called professionals don't look at, like, well, your theory isn't panning out most places.
Yeah.
So there's obviously some secondary cause at play.
Right.
But I mean, the whole thing got political very quickly.
It did.
Which is unfortunate.
Well, the single virus theory allows for big drug companies to push antiviral medications, which may or may not work.
Right.
Like maybe you can reduce the viral load by giving remdesivir, but if you already have a low lymphocyte count and you have PCP pneumonia on top of that, remdesivir isn't going to do anything for your outcome. You're already screwed. Forget the viral load. You got to get your lymphocyte count up and you got to get the fungus under control. That's a whole different ballgame. So, but the prevailing single virus theory of this thing is preventing that sort of reasoning from prevailing in making treatment decisions.
Yes. So MAPS we're gonna solve COVID. We probably already have.
We're working on it. I think we
just solved it. We're gonna rediscover the California grizzly.
Yep.
And we're going to preserve America's Amazon.
Knights of the Golden Circle, baby.
Knights of the Golden Circle, and create the Afro Jungle Celt Alliance.
Yep. I'm ready for our merch to come online. I think this episode just pushed it over the wall.
Yeah, we need merch.
We need some hats.
Hats. They should be cowboy hats, maybe.
I'll look into that.
Maybe just wearing a cowboy hat is a bit of a thing. Mm-hmm. Like wearing a baseball cap, you can go out and that's pretty normal.
Yeah.
But you put on a cowboy hat and people are going to look at you.
I'm thinking cowboy hat, straw cowboy hat with a modified Knights of the Golden Circle logo and symbols all over the crown of it.
Ooh, maybe the band around the thing is just like a map, like a strip of map of the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh, yeah,
like the ring of the land.
Mm-hmm.
And then you make the golden circle around your head.
The coastline printed on the band. We've already designed something that's going to be impossible to have made. That's the problem.
Which is how we do it. Well, the thing is, the Gulf of Mexico is America. It's the Caribbean. It's the Mediterranean of the Americas.
Yeah. Well, if you would pay, let us know what you would pay for a cowboy hat themed on our show / the Knights of the Golden Circle.
Right. Just go onto the website, go to the store.
Yeah.
Look for the hat.
We don't have a store.
The hat labeled Julie that cost $12,000. And then when you buy that, Smokestack will make things happen.
I will just make some stuff happen. Yep.
Make some stuff happen, and there'll be
$12,000.
I'm imagining how poorly our human trafficking would go. Someone would pay $12,000 for like a 16-year-old girl named Julie, and they'd end up with like a 35-year-old dude named Juan. It's like, well, listen, this is the best we could do.
We're not good at this. We're sort of low rent human traffickers.
Do you want Jose or Hose B? I don't know which one. What about Hose C? Because I don't. We wouldn't be very good human traffickers. Because my thing would be, if I was a human trafficker, I would always feel bad.
Yeah.
About the person in the box, and I'd be like, "Do you want some more air?"
Well, you have a conscience, you know.
I'm sorry. I would, but would I if I was going through you?
Yeah, I don't know. You get to that point.
Like you can write a story or like a script for a TV show of like a burglar with a heart of gold or whatever.
Yeah. It's not actually happening.
I mean, that's more believable than a human trafficker with a heart of gold.
That's true. That's true. If I was going to buy one of them, it would be the burglar.
Yeah, it's like he's a thief with a heart of gold. You know, he fell into it, but you know, a human trafficker he's really good on the inside.
Right,
is a lot less believable.
You know, that's really the way things are going. That's going to be the next great American novel. It's going to be about a human trafficker with a heart of gold.
I searched in my time. I've been on bread. I sell in children for a heart of gold. That was Neil Young's original lyrics.
That's the best Neil Young impression I've heard today.
That's the best of our lives. But anyway, we're going to talk about near-death experiences.
Oh, we got more to the show? Excellent.
We got more to the show. How long have we been going?
An hour and 11 minutes.
Oh, yeah, we got plenty of time.
Okay.
We got more to this show. Look, I've been reading this book. It's called Evidence of the Afterlife, The Science of Near-Death Experiences, by a medical doctor who maybe he knows about funguses named Jeffrey Long. And he started this thing called the Near-Death Research Foundation, or NDERF, NDERF.org.
Okay. All right.
Go. And this has been going on a while. And basically, he got interested in, like, he'd have patients that would, like, die on the table, and then there'd be zero brain activity, and then they resuscitate them and they tell them about all this marvelous stuff.
Wow.
And he was like, that's very interesting. Why don't I look into that more? And he found there wasn't a lot of research being done in the medical community on trips to heaven or whatever. So he did this questionnaire, and then he published the results of it into this book, right? Which was it was a big study, and it was I think they had over 1,000 people answer this study over 10 years that had these near-death experiences, and he just collected it and figured out some trends and some commonalities, right? So I'll give you the basic things of the survey. So it was a questionnaire, had over 100 pretty detailed questions on there. And then they would sort of score you by well, there were like 12 metrics they would sort of score you on to figure out like how intense your thing was, your near-death experience. And then I think they would hand select those from like more detailed questions.
Okay.
Or something. So if someone was like, yeah, I had a near-death experience. I had a car wreck, and then there was this flash of light, and then I was back in the car. It's like, well, that's not a lot to go on.
Yeah.
Right. You need someone like I was dead on the table, and then I went up to heaven, and then I walked. My ghost walked around the hospital for a while. You know, you need something like that. So anyway, it was evaluated on these 12 elements, right? These are the 12 common things of a near-death experience. And I know you personally have had a near-death experience.
I have.
And I want you to, I'm going to go through this, and you tell me if you had these.
Okay. All right.
Number 1, out-of-body experience, a separation of the consciousness from the physical body.
Yes.
Okay. See. 2, heightened senses or awareness while in this state.
Oh man, I don't remember. I mean, I was sort of flying, and I had a feeling of I was able to perceive everything going on around me from when my body was underneath a rock under some water. So I guess that would be a heightened awareness because I was aware of things I wouldn't have otherwise have been able to be aware of in that state.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's 2 out of 2 so far.
Okay.
3, intense and generally positive emotion or feeling.
What was my feeling? I don't remember really what it felt like. I don't know.
I feel like I will say I feel like this right here and a few other things, and I'll point them out. There's a bias, in my opinion, in the near-death experience thing towards only focusing on the positive ones.
Right. Because
no one wants to be like, well, first, I think people report it less. If you have a near-death experience, you're like, I went to hell.
I don't want to talk about it.
They don't write books about that one.
Yeah.
Right? And if they do, they don't become bestsellers.
It's not going to sell well at the Christian bookstore.
So I think, and then 3, I think this survey thing is sort of slanted a little bias toward the positive. Because you can find a lot of near-death experiences that were very negative. They don't necessarily describe hell that we would think of it. Some do.
Right.
But that are negative. But those are not overly popular. I just want to point out, I think that this have number 3 as a metric of intense, generally positive emotion as like a scoring metric is a bit of a bias.
Yeah. No, I don't remember positive or negative because I didn't really travel far from my body, or I didn't really leave the scene. I just was above it for a short period of time.
Right. Like I was listening to this one fella and he was talking about like his near-death experience and how he had an experience of like basically hell. He didn't use that language. And then he was like, and I came back and then I realized, no, that wasn't me. I am a good person. And I remember thinking, I was like, if I flatlined and had an experience of hell, I might I don't know, take it a little more seriously.
No, if you think about I don't want to go off on a big tangent, but think about the human condition and our ability to lie to ourselves. If I were damned and I had a near-death experience and I went to hell, first thing I would do is wake up and try to excuse it away and pretend it wasn't what it really was.
I bet most of the people in hell don't admit they're there.
I was telling my wife this the other day. It's like the people in hell aren't going to admit that they deserve it. They're going to be mad and like, why am I in here? I can't believe this is a huge mistake. I need to be released immediately. That's going to be the general attitude.
Or if they even admit that it's happening.
Yeah.
The last couple of months have really made me reevaluate how thoroughly people can self-delude.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Anyway, I worked out a whole thing on the postmodern problem and how to solve it.
Awesome.
But I will talk about that on another show.
Okay.
Anyway, so that was number 3. Number 4, passing through a tunnel.
Other than the rock coming out of the hole in the rock I was stuck in. No. Yeah. Not like a tunnel of light or anything.
Right. I've always found that weird. Why is there a tunnel?
Yeah. That might just be like the blood going out of your brain and your vision, constricting from the periphery to the center.
It could be. It could be. It could be. Okay. Number 5, encountering a mystical or brilliant light.
No light.
Okay, no light.
Just the regular light of the canyon that I was in. Okay.
Encountering other beings, mystical or deceased relatives or friends.
Yes, mystical being pulled me out by the foot.
Okay. A sense of alteration of time and or space.
No. Other than I was flying. Maybe time. I guess time seemed to slow down. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
A life review, or some sort of review of your life, judgment, or you see your life flash before your eyes.
No.
Okay. Encountering heavenly realms. Again, see, that's a very biased one.
Yeah.
Encountering heavenly realms. What about people that encounter other realms? Okay.
Yeah. This guy probably thinks everybody goes to heaven. So that
right. Did you encounter any realms at all?
No, just the regular realm.
The regular realm. The regular realm of the flat stationary Earth.
Yes.
Did you encounter or learn any special knowledge? Have any gnosis?
Well, I guess an appreciation that there are supernatural beings around us intervening in the affairs of men.
Okay, but that's sort of like just because you saw a mystical being.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I believed before in an academic sense and then believed afterward in a very personal sense because one pulled me out by the foot.
I'm going to give that a 4.5 because that sort of goes with the mystical being.
Okay.
Did you encounter a boundary or a barrier beyond which you felt like returning was impossible?
No.
Okay. And then did you return to your body either voluntarily or involuntarily?
Involuntarily, yes.
Yeah, so you got 5.5 out of 12, which is a pretty good score. It's not a classic near-death experience,
right?
But it's a near-death experience.
Well, I wouldn't classify mine, and I was thinking about this as we spoke. I wouldn't classify mine as a near-death experience because I felt like I knew, or maybe the message here was it's definitely not your time to die, not even close. But I'm gonna, but God was like, I'm gonna show you how I do this, and you're gonna get to watch for a second. That's sort of what I came away with. It's like, I'm really going to save your life using one of my angelic messengers pulling you out by the foot, and you're going to get to watch it, and it's going to blow your mind. And it did.
See? Okay. So, yes. The respondents of this survey, most of them had a score of 7 or higher on that scale. Mm-hmm. So we're talking more classical.
Yeah.
Tunnel of light sort of near-death experience. And almost 95% of the people that have these describe them as definitely real. Mm-hmm. And no one describes it as definitely not real. Okay. There's 5% that said, I don't know, maybe. Mm-hmm. And most people even went so far as to say it was the most real thing that ever happened. Mm. It was more real than real. Like, here was one quote. And not only the most real thing, but sometimes the best event of their lives. Right. So here was one quote from an Indeed. He said, "I was," and I have to read this in the voice I assume that they would use.
Okay.
Maybe in the post we can edit some nice mystical chimes over this.
Can do.
I was at peace with myself. Nothing hurt. I could only see my life and self through that being's love. There was no negative in myself or from that being for anything I had done, including killing myself. My suicide was changed by the power of the truth and love which it was seen. That loving grace, total acceptance, complete love and truth created a joy in me. I saw that love was in me too, not just from the being shining down on me. It was in me as part of myself, and I was full of love and peace.
That's beautiful.
It was beautiful, but I think that's very common. People, they die and they're like, "Hey, things are better," which you don't expect because you're like, "Oh, this is awful," and then I make fun of it a bit because a lot of these people use sort of like very sort of corny emotional language to describe what they're experiencing. But I can't fault them because a lot of experiencers are women. Mm-hmm. Because men have them too, but men don't usually fill out surveys about them.
Sure.
And so a lot of it's like, love and light and everything's good. And
so I have a question about the survey.
Yeah.
Are the people surveyed, were they confirmed by this doctor to have actually flatlined on the table or whatever?
They had different. Yeah, they had different. I mean, they didn't all flatline on a table. Some of them had car crashes or.
But there was like. I would like a witness to their flatline. You know what I mean? For them to be included in the survey.
Yes. I think
this is a very easy thing to make up.
Very easy to
just throwing that out there.
Yeah. But a lot of these were independently confirmed. And this is an aside. I've often wondered if baptism started as a method of inducing a near-death experience. All right, so you cover the guy's face.
Yeah.
And you just drown him for a second. And you pull him back up.
So,
and then it's like, and then it's like you see the light, and then you come back out. I know that's a friend's theory, but that just is someone mentioned that to me once, and I forget where I heard that, and I was like, could that have been the origins of it? Because John the Baptist goes out doing baptisms, and people know what it is, right? And so I wonder like how it started.
Well, there's a lot of evidence for baptism-like rituals being performed by many different, early historic peoples that had nothing to do with Christianity. So,
right. So I wonder if baptism basically controlled drowning.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody did it. That sounds like something the Molech people would do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, maybe that will be a service we sell on our merch site too. Smokestack will come to your house.
Yeah.
And drown you.
Almost drown you.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, you have to have insurance because one of these is going to go bad.
I'm sure somebody will insure us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So to your question, so here's what they used as their metric for deciding whether or not you could be included.
Mm-hmm.
So near-death experience is defined as experiences that happen in a condition so physically compromised that they would die if the condition did not improve. And in general, the experiencers are unconscious and often apparently clinically dead with the absence of heartbeat and breathing.
Okay.
And it doesn't say brain dead, because that's harder to determine, because most of the time you don't have a brain thing hooked up to you don't have a scanner hooked up to your brain when they're doing CPR on you.
Mm-hmm.
But there have been some cases of people also being clinically brain dead that have NDEs as well.
Okay.
Okay. So one requirement of this to be included in the survey is your experience had to be lucid. So it couldn't just be like you wake up after the fact and feel like something weird had happened.
Okay.
You had to be elucidated. And like I said, you had to score 7 or higher on those 12 points to be like considered like your NDE was strong enough to look at.
Gotcha.
Which again, there's a little bit of bias in those numbers, and also because it also not only the hell angle or the bad outcome angle, but also like non-classical near-death experiences. Like maybe my near-death experience, I go to Atlantis or something, right? And why, right?
Well,
so anyway.
If you think about it, people that did have a near-death experience and go to hell, if the natural reaction is to assume that it wasn't real, they're not going to report it as an NDE. So there's going to be a bias towards people that had positive experiences, not just from the side of the researcher, but from the side of those reporting.
Right. And like also in like NDEs that don't conform to that standard model also are not going to be underreported. Like I heard one fellow, there was one book it was spoken of on the Mysterious Universe podcast, and his NDE was he died on a table, and then he like sat up and he was like on this cold slab naked in front of this temple, and he has this thought, well, if I look over the edge, I'll be able to see my body. And so he like leans over the side of away from the temple, and he just looks down and sees like the whole cosmos and like stars in the sky, and
weird. And
then he comes back to his body, which that doesn't fit in. That's a near-death experience, but it doesn't fit in with like the tunnel of light.
Yeah.
And like so there's a lot of experiences people have that don't fit the model. I'm just trying to get that out there. This is one model that is common, but it's far from the only one.
Yeah.
As an aside, do you think Lazarus had a near-death experience?
Like I mean, he was dead for how long? A couple days?
Like 3-4 days.
Yeah.
And then the little girl, Christ raised from the dead.
Yeah.
Right. Like I've often wondered, like, did he remember? Because Christ describes it as sleep.
Right.
Right. He describes it as like, Lazarus has fallen asleep. Do not cry. She's not dead. She is sleeping. Right. And then he resurrects them. But so is that saying that death is like unto sleep in that it's unconscious, or that it's unconscious, but the experience is sort of like what you experience while you're dreaming, and a near-death experience can be compared to a dream state? Or
maybe these two characters, Lazarus and the girl, were in their death, they experienced a sleep-like state because their death was specifically for the purpose of Christ demonstrating his power.
Yeah, or do you just forget when you wake up? You know, like that's the river, the idea of the river Styx.
Yeah.
You'll go, and then all your memories are washed away. Like your dreams fade away. Here's a tip about remembering your dreams, by the way. Don't move.
Don't move. Just stay there.
If you wake up from a dream you want to remember, your dream will begin to fade as soon as you begin to physically move. I don't know what that is, but you can try this out for yourself. Physical movement makes the dream go away. But lie still with your eyes open and just meditate on the dream, and it will not go away from you.
So what if the dream is something that exists independently of your head?
That's what I'm getting at.
And if you move your head out of that space, you lose the dream.
Yeah. What if so? Is death and the experience like? Is being a ghost sort of like being in a dream? I don't know. Like I don't know. Anyway, neither here nor there. There's traditions, pious traditions about what Lazarus was like. I say pious meaning just religious.
Sure.
Of what Lazarus was like after he was resurrected, and the most common one is that he was very stoic and didn't really talk to people, and he never smiled or anything. And people have interpreted that as his despondency, that he went to heaven, and his despondency of coming back made him so like, oh, this is so awful.
That's a bummer.
Why? And then he's worried about not going the second time. Like, what if I mess up between? Man. And so then he's just all saddled with all this problems and like,
I refuse to believe that this is true.
I know this is just a legend. That's all I'm saying. And then he's like, oh, this is so terrible. Why couldn't I was fine. I was in heaven. It was great. And now I'm back and worried that I won't go back when I die the second time. And then, and he's like, I already went through the dying one time and it wasn't fun. And now I got to do it again. And it was said the only time he laughed afterwards was when he saw someone carrying a clay pot full of water. And he looked up and is supposed to have laughed and said, ha, clay carrying clay. And then that's it.
There you go.
So I don't know. There's not I don't particularly believe that one, but that is every character in the Bible throughout the past 2,000 years of Christianity has had stories made up about what happened after they exited their scene from the Bible. So you can look them all up, but that's the one about Lazarus. Anyway, so his near-death experience was, according to that, pretty good. Okay, so I'll go through those 12 points. Okay, so the first one, the out-of-body experience. 75.4% of the people of the surveys used for this book said they had an out-of-body experience.
Okay.
And they quote it as, I could feel my spirit actually leaving my body. I saw and heard the conversations between my husband and the doctors taking place outside my room about 40 feet away down the hallway. I was later able to verify this conversation to my shocked husband. So, I'm just giving you some quotes of people talking
That's
about.
kind of cool.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about being there and observing things. And then, there's one where she talked about, she sort of floated up around the hospital on the outside. And she said, there's a pair of white shoes on the roof. And they went up there later and they found the white shoes.
Ooh, weird.
Weird, right? What does that mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, number 2, heightened senses. 74.4% said they had heightened senses, saying it seemed more real than real, or, quote, the most real thing I'd ever experienced in my life. One said, quote, there isn't any way to explain it, as there was no feeling like it is here on Earth. It was crystal clear. It was like going home at last. At last. A feeling of belonging, meaning, of completeness. And I actually, that at last comma at last was actually in the quote.
Oh, okay.
I'm just reading these. This is the sort of person that does the indie.
I picture all these people like clutching handfuls of crystals while they're saying this.
I know. But see, here's the thing. People that don't pearl clutch crystals also have near-death experiences. They just don't fill out the survey.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Right. Like you have a near-death experience.
I never filled out a survey.
Well, you do clutch crystals, though.
I do not.
3, intense, generally positive emotions or feelings. 76.2 said that they did. 52 with 52% of those describing it as incredible joy. Okay, so let's say 76.2% said they had generally intense positive emotions. That means 33.8 who said no, either they had no emotions or negative. So there you go. That's how many people go to hell. Is 33.8% of the population who did not have. We know the number now.
Okay.
So 76.2% of people, when they die, have intense positive emotions and feelings, and 33.8% either have nothing or negative.
What if that was the devil tricking them into thinking that?
You can always be like, yeah. Okay, so that's how many people go to hell. We solved that on maps. Basically 34% of one third. Hey, is that a coincidence that that's the same number of demons that fell?
Oh, that's interesting.
See, the devil with his tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky.
Oh.
A third of the stars, a third of the people. That's all I'm saying.
Interesting little. Okay.
Okay, so one in every 3 people goes to hell. That's the map's orthodoxy.
Okay, we gotta. We need to pause right here because my bladder is going to explode if we continue.
Okay.
So I'll be right back and I'll fix this in post. Just hang tight for a minute.
Oh, a drop of Nelson's blood wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, a drop of Nelson's blood wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, a drop of Nelson's blood wouldn't do us any harm. And we'll all hang on behind. And we'll roll the old chariot along. We'll roll the old chariot along. We'll roll the old chariot along. And we'll all hang on behind. So we'll roll the old chariot along. We'll roll the old chariot along. We'll roll the old chariot along. And we'll all hang on behind. Oh, a good night ashore wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, a good night ashore wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, a good night ashore wouldn't do us any harm. And we'll all hang on behind. We'll roll the old chariot along. We'll roll the old chariot. Oh, you're back. Hello. I was just singing our sea shanties for our listeners in your absence.
I might just have to leave that whole bit in there. I don't know.
I had a minute of pausing, and then I was like, sea shanties,
Okay.
How many sea shanties do you know?
0.
We got to up that.
Well, yo-ho, blow the man down.
Roll the old chariot along. That's
Okay.
the one I was thinking. That's a good one. Okay, so where were we? Intentionally positive. So we decided 33% of people go to hell, 1/3. So yes. And one of the people they described, I pulled a quote from the book by one of the people about each of these things. When I got to the light, the totality of life was love and happiness. There was nothing else. And it was intense. Very intense. Endless in scope. And, I mock that, but that does sound nice. Endless
it does sound nice.
In scope. But you can rest assured that most of those people sound like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, number 4, passing through a tunnel. This is less likely. 33.8% answered yes to that. The same number that said they did not experience positive emotions. So maybe the tunnel is the pathway to the underworld. I don't know. But I don't think so, because most of the people that go through the tunnel say it was to a good place.
Okay.
So my next awareness was of being submerged and cradled in a warm, wavy, wafting motion at the opening of the tunnel. The tunnel had a billowy, soft sides and was well lit, with the tunnel dimensions decreasing and brightness increasing as it got closer to a single bright light. We traveled very fast into a tunnel. The tunnel was of different colors: blue, yellow, white, green, and red. So there's this, you die and then you go through. A lot of people describe they are still on Earth. They're like outside their body looking at it, you know. And then then they turn around and they look up and there is a tunnel that they're feeling called towards with a bright light at the end of it. So I don't know. Take that for what you. Maybe that is how it feels like when you exit your body.
Yeah.
Then go up. Could be. Number 5, encountering a mystical or brilliant light. 65%, 64.6 said they saw this. All right. So at first the light was blue. Then it transitioned to white. It was an opalescent white. It almost glowed, but it did not shine. I don't know what that means. It glowed, but it did not shine. It was bright. Well, maybe shining is like has starburst around the edges, like twinkling.
Yeah.
Maybe
well, if you remember Rocket Man's description of when he saw the lion angel thing,
that's true.
It kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah. It glowed, but it did not shine. It was bright, but not intense bright, like glowing bright, pure bright. Pure, but not in the usual sense of the word. Pure as in something you've never seen before or could never quite put into words. Now, this one was one of my favorites because this one used the word pods. And I was like, well, that's definitely how it is. It was as if we passed through a wall. And I think the ones that use pods are probably men.
Okay.
That's my own personal bias of how people describe things.
Change your voice for this one.
I will. It was as if... I'm trying to do like a guy with the big glasses and flannel shirt.
I'm thinking like low class Englishman, like Cockney accent, somebody who worked in coal.
It was as if we passed through a wall in a light pod, mate, directly. There was a large, majestic center light, and then the individual yet connected pod lights, exactly like the center light, only smaller. I think now the pod lights, like mine, were other souls connected to the center light, God. So he's describing seeing souls as pod lights connected to a center light. I don't. that was one of my favorites. Number 6, you experienced this one: encountering other beings, either mystical beings or deceased relatives or friends. Now this one was a good one. There are 2 of these. I heard my mother's and daughter's voices, but my daughter, who was only approximately 2 years old at the time, it was the sound of her voice grown up, but I knew it was her voice. They called my name, and my body moved like through an air current very quickly. It was like the wind carried me so fast, and I saw a bright, bright light very quickly, and then a beach. And then I saw my mom and daughter standing on the beach. My daughter was grown up. I find that one interesting. It's like you see, this is a near-death experience with someone that is dead, their mother, but someone who is still alive, his daughter, but in a grown-up state, like her mature state. I've always, that sort of thing always like, what does that imply? Like you're going to some sort of timeless realm, perhaps.
Right.
And also the physicality of that one. A lot of them have this physicality element. Like you think like, there's not going to be a beach. right? But it's like you go to a beach, and there's this other one, this fella, I'll get to him in a minute, but he talked about he knew he was experiencing altered time because he was going around the hospital in his ghostly state. And he'd look down at his watch and he'd see that the time never changed, but he still had his watch on.
Oh, weird.
And that got me thinking, you would think that ghosts would be naked, but they never are. Because you would think like, oh, if your spirit, you're going to have like, you're just your ghost, just you, right? Your body, but you're always still wearing clothes.
And
usually the clothes of the period you died in or whatever. And that got me, what does that imply for the physicality of objects? Like, is there a spirit to just existing? Like if a thing exists, it has some sort of spiritual connection. Like it has to be distilled down from the spirit realm. And then I was like, well, maybe that means the Egyptians were right. And you do get to keep all the stuff you were buried with. And then it's like people say you can't take it with you when you go. It's like, yeah, you can. You just got to be wearing it at the time. And then you're set. Like if you need a big maybe the Egyptians were onto something. Yeah. They're like, look, I want to take all my stuff. And like, okay, well, we'll just put it all in the coffin with him. He's gonna need a big coffin. Well, get the building Jews. And that's how the pyramids were made. And it's because some guy needed his Rolex in the afterlife, and they realized that you could do it. I don't know. That always like the fact that ghosts always appear with ghostly material possessions, and then like near-death experiencers describe also seeing like their watch on their hand, or they look down and they may have their shoes on or something. I'm not sure what that implies.
Kind of makes me want to walk around with a backpack on all the time now.
Yeah, you need to die with your backpack on so that you have a compass in the afterlife.
Yep.
That is an official MAPS motto. Die with your backpack on so you have a compass to get that. Because otherwise you're going to be totally lost.
There's a lot of like life philosophy stuff that can come out of that phrase if you really break it down. It's pretty good. Die with your backpack on.
Yeah, die with your backpack on because you need the stuff in it. And maybe the Egyptians, like, I don't know how it works. I don't know what you get, but I do know that ghosts are never naked. You would think they would be. And some people say that when they have their near-death experience, they have their watch on. Another one in the same vein of this seeing other beings said, my dad was right next to me, but I couldn't see him visually. My sister was very close. I felt she was to my left. I felt other family members close by, but I did not see them. My sister and other family members seemed to be more to the left. The only person besides my sister and my dad that I knew there was my grandmother. There were others there, but I cannot say for certain besides the one that I mentioned. I like that one. So like some of them have the visual element, like you see it, but this guy was like, I didn't see anything, but I felt their presence. Right? Some people describe it in that sort of vague terms, but other people are like, no, I saw them and they were on a beach. And it's like, and then that brings up imagery of like the heavenly shores. You know, this all stuff has there's an overlap between the physical and the spiritual that is not well acknowledged. Because,
agree. Yeah,
it's okay. So number 7, a sense of alteration or time or space. I think you said yes to this one.
Yeah.
When I first left my body, I had a diving watch on. This is that guy. I took some very unscientific measurements of the distance I traveled by watching for features and measuring them by the second hand on my watch. So he's saying like he's moving across the landscape in his ghostly form, and he's trying to measure how fast he's moving by looking at his watch on his ghost arm.
Oh.
And he
weird.
Says, this was totally unsaid. My conclusion was, and always has been, I was measuring time in an altered time. The ground never moved in a linear fashion. The distances were erratic at best. They always seemed to be changing, sometimes repeating and then instantly becoming longer or shorter than the previous distance. Yet my watch was always ticking without change. Isn't that weird?
That is weird. Yeah.
And what does that mean about time in the afterlife? Or time, like, because so he's got this watch moving, but it doesn't seem to have any correlation to physical speed.
Right.
And velocity is measured as distance by time. But if you're see, in the eternal realms, I think time begins to lose its meaning. And part of time is wrapped up in space-time. And so this gets very deep very quickly. Anyway, yet my watch was always ticking without change. My intuition and impression were that I was in a different time zone, one where my earthly watch was of no use or inept at making any measurement or reflecting time. So he has it, but it's not useful. And that may be true.
Yeah.
That may be true of Pharaoh's bow and arrow.
Oh, right.
I got it, but you know, all I'm saying is I'm going to die with a compass on, with a backpack, just in case.
Okay.
Was of no use and inept at making any. Also, without mistake, I would say the whole thing took an hour or more. It seemed to me that I was in the NDE for a very long time. But when I asked my diving partners how long I had been unconscious, they estimated 5 to 10 minutes. Thus, I had another reason to support why my diving watch didn't seem to measure the time in my NDE. Another person said, both time and space in Earth stopped completely. Simultaneously, the time and the space on the other side were completely alive. So she's describing a different time and a different space-time.
Yeah.
Another person says, yes, while I was in the light, I had no sense of time as I know it here on Earth. In other words, no sense of the serial nature of time, past, present, or future. All times, past, present, and future, were experienced at every moment in time while I was in the light. So
I like that.
Yeah, all times are experienced at the same time.
Yeah.
Which has been my thing. I don't think eternal means eternal in duration of linear time.
Right.
I think it means the transcendence of time.
I think so too. Yeah.
Right, which solves a lot of these issues that people have about heaven. Like, won't it be boring?
Right.
Which I, as a kid, is like, you're like, wait, it's just church forever. It's like, that sounds, it sounds better than being in a fire.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. It's like, no. See, and a lot of people genuinely think that. They think it's just church forever.
Right.
And it's like, no. That's not. First of all, I think even Jesus would be bored in a lot of modern churches.
Yeah.
And this sermon, because, the thing is, most sermons just amount to, dear people, please be good. And you can just say that and go home. And then, there's no, depth of insight, offered. There's no, there are some that do a better job.
Yeah.
But I do feel like Jesus would be quite bored in church these days. So then 34% said they had this, everything seemed to happen all at once. So,
okay, suspension of linear time. Gotcha.
Right. Number 8, life review. Life review is a very nice secular way of saying judgment. It's the same thing. I saw my life flash before me shortly after I left my body and was still in the hospital room. I was told that I was going to help educate and teach many people, and that is exactly what I'm doing now. Let's see. The next person said, I saw every important event that had ever happened in my life, from my first birthday to my first kiss to a fight with my parents. I saw how selfish I was and how I would give anything to go back and change.
Mm-hmm.
Another person said, next he showed me my life review. I don't know who he is. Every second from birth until death, you will see and feel and experience your emotions and experience the emotions and others you hurt, feel their pain. What this is for is you can see what kind of person you were and how you treated others from another vantage point, and you will be a harder judge on yourself than you are to anyone else is. So I like that. That's like judge not that you be not judged for what judgment you pronounce. It's like be careful because you're going to be held to your standard here.
Mm-hmm.
The standards of and people bear that out in these near-death experiences. Like, I go up there and I saw how I was, and then that was compared to how I thought I should have been.
Yeah. And
then God's looking at you like, how do we think we scored here?
Mm-hmm.
It genuinely could be that your judgment is to some degree a self-scored test.
Yep.
Like, God's looking at you like, you really think you did? What about the Wayfair incident?
Yeah.
Number 9, encountering unworldly heavenly realms. Again, the bias there. Okay.
Sure.
Quote, at the end of the tunnel was the most peaceful place. It was beyond my imaginings, pure, serene, and loving. And this is from the 76 the 76% that go to heaven and not the 1/3 of humans that go to hell.
Okay.
Which is based on it. The landscape, quote, the landscape was beautiful. Again, has a landscape, very physicality. Blue skies, rolling hills, flowers, full of light, as if lit from within itself and emanating light, not reflecting it. And that's, as Paul says, or not Paul, John says in Revelations, there will be no more sun, for God himself is their light.
Yeah.
And so it was full of light, as if it was lit from within itself and emanating light, not reflecting it. We all right now reflect light. That's how you see. The light reflects off of us, and that's how we see. But you emanate light. Very different. Interesting. There was such beauty, beautiful beyond expression. There was also a bright city, or something like a city, in the distance. The colors and structures of everything were beautiful. So the heavenly city is observed in that one. And this is, and people will say, like, well, maybe they're just experiencing what they had a preconceived notion that they should experience.
Right.
However, these near-death experiences that they've collected in these surveys are from people from all around the world, different cultures, different races, different stocks in life, poor, rich, and they all have very similar themes. It may be interpreted slightly differently, but this idea of like heavenly realm, heavenly city, some sort of life review or judgment, those happen over and over again. Over and over again, regardless of the context. Okay, number 10, encountering or learning special knowledge. And again, this uses a his. And I don't know who his is. I assume God. When I looked into his eyes, again, eyes, like this is a physical description here, like as if this person that they're seeing has eyes. All the secrets of the universe were revealed to me.
Oh.
It was a big claim.
It's a big data dump right there.
I'm going to slip back into my voice for that one.
Okay.
When I looked into his eyes, all the secrets of the universe were revealed to me. I know how everything works because I looked into his eyes for a moment. All the secrets of the universe, all knowledge of all time, everything. I know how everything works.
Well, did she go on to disclose these? I mean, that seems like important information.
I don't know. Another person said, I understood. I used this term because I did not actually hear with my ears. I understood that the colored drops were the experiences of all who had lived. The experiences existed as separate items, yet belonged to the whole. The whole that I saw was the collective knowledge of all. That's sort of like the pod person.
Okay.
But note how these sorts of visual experiences match sort of nicely with what the prophets describe. Like you see this idea of these, wheels within wheels, and it's not wholly different. Okay. And I do like the idea that when you, like, if you encounter truth itself, like I am the truth, then you experience, like, what it was all about. Like, I know how everything, all the secrets of the universe, all knowledge, all time.
It didn't seem like anybody describes experiencing uncertainty in this state.
No, that is never described, actually, or very seldomly. The consensus of the near dead is that things make sense. Like when you step back from your life, you understand what your life was about. Which that's sort of intuitive.
Yeah.
I think. Number 11, encountering a boundary or a barrier. On my side of the barrier, time seemed to go slow. On the other side, time went by faster. There was this door in front of me with this music coming out and people celebrating with utter joy. I knew and recognized some, and I recognized the place as home. And I knew once I crossed, I couldn't come back. And I knew a woman who had a near-death experience. She was in a bad car wreck. And she described going to a place. And when she came upon these people, they all looked at her coming, like she was sort of walking up. And they all looked at her and they said, "Send her back. She's not dead. Send her back. She's not dead." And then she woke back up in the hospital room. So I don't know. So there's this there's this point at which your soul crosses over where it can't, like your soul, somehow your soul is attached to your body. Your immaterial part is somehow attached to your body.
Right.
At some place. Maybe in the brain, maybe in the heart. The medieval people thought it was in the coccyx of your butt.
Really?
Well, the sacrum, really, not the coccyx. The coccyx comes down off the sacrum, but the sacrum bone, the bottom of your spine, it's called sacrum because that means seat, which is the seat of the soul.
Oh.
And they thought that was where the soul connected to the body because that is often the last bone to deteriorate in a skeleton.
Oh.
And so they thought, well, that's, I don't know why that's necessary, but that was their thinking. And that's why it's called the sacrum. It means the seat is the seat of the soul. A lot of people think it's because it's the bone you sit down on, but not true. It was the seat of the soul. And so at some point in your body, maybe your brain, maybe your pineal gland, maybe the soul hooks in. And the idea is that under very distressing physical conditions, like say a car accident or drowning where you've been oxygen deprived, that connection unhooks and your consciousness floats away from your body. But then if your soul gets too far away, it can't come back. Right? But if the conditions of your body are restored to where it can hook in again, it will hook on again. Like the connection comes loose, like a loose wire.
Right.
But then when oxygen flows back into the brain, it can flow again.
Okay.
Is this idea. This is where the material and the spiritual are meeting.
All right.
So that's what we got going on here. And another person said, I reached the point where I felt like I had to make a choice, whether to go back to life or onward into death. My best friend was there, who had died of cancer 2 years before. And she told me this was as far as I could go, or I would not be able to turn back. You've come to the edge, she said. This is as far as you can go. Now go back and live your life fully and fearlessly. 31% said they encountered some sort of barrier or physical limitation. And then 12, the last one, a return to the body either voluntarily or involuntarily. I remember as I looked down at them, I guess them is Earth, or them is the people around my body. Oh, here it is. I remember as I looked down at them, I said to the angel, why don't they just let her die? I did not realize at that time the body I was looking at was mine. Then in a commanding voice, she, the angel, said, you must go back now. She must live. She said in a soft, calming voice, she has a son to raise. So there we're describing the angel as gendered and female, which could be. I don't know. I don't know if angels are divided into male and female. Maybe. Some of the angels do appear to look human in.
Well, the whatever I saw, I guess it was an angel, was dressed like a park ranger. So,
Yeah.
Do with that what you will.
Well, yeah, which is why I wondered why you expressed disbelief when I talked about the men in plaid that come around with Bigfoot encounters.
Yeah, it's kind of the same idea.
You had a men in plaid near-death experience.
I guess I did.
Because, well, see, I think that makes sense, though, because the angel will come just sort of dressed in whatever is appropriate.
In context.
Yeah, he's not going to come dressed in a toga to a kid at summer camp. I mean, maybe not. I know a man that claims to have seen both a demon and an angel. And by the way, he said the angel was far scarier.
Oh.
He said the demon was like evil and very, very, very unpleasant, like terrifying. But he said when I saw the angel, it was like looking at a creature, in his words, that could rip the sky apart if it wanted to.
Ooh.
And he said it looked like just immensely powerful, which makes sense. Like when every time the angels show up in the Bible, they're like, "Don't be afraid."
Yeah.
Like, whoa! It's like, ah! Anyway, the angel told this fellow that he appeared to the angel, and he didn't use verbal words. The guy said, but he just got this message in his brain when the
Okay.
angel showed up. He said, "You have a debt of suffering to pay."
Ooh,
Which is a bad message
Man.
to get from an angel. It's a bad message to get from an angel. But anyway, but he described the angel he saw as, he said, I couldn't tell if it was male or female.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. I don't know about the genders of angels. And then, so number 12, so the return to the body, either voluntary or involuntary. This person said, I found out my purpose now would be to live heaven on earth using this new understanding and also to share this knowledge with other people. However, I had the choice of whether to come back into life or to go towards death. I was made to understand that it was not my time, but I always had the choice. And if I choose death, I would not be experiencing a lot of the gifts that the rest of my life still held in store. One of these things I wanted to know was that if I chose life, would I have to come back to this sick body? Because my body was very, very sick and the organs stopped functioning. I was then made to understand that if I chose life, my body would heal very quickly, and I would see a difference not in months or weeks, but days. So this person is describing not only near-death experience, but miraculous healing.
So I assume that actually happened.
Yeah, and they got out of the hospital, and they, so 58.5% said yes, they experienced this one confused me. Return to the body, voluntary or involuntary. It's like, well, if you're back here, wouldn't you have returned to the body? Shouldn't that be 100%? But I think that means they were aware of it happening.
Right? Yeah. Mine was more just like a flash, kind of I'm back in it.
This is like either you have to go back now or you can choose.
Okay.
Right. So that's the 12 points of the near-death experience. And if you the near-death stuff started, the first one was Dr. Michael Sebom.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he wrote it was either a book or a medical article called The Near-Death Experience in like the 60s or 70s. And that's when all this stuff began to be like sort of codified into like a quote standard near-death experience, like the tunnel of light, the thing, because he had these patients too that would describe these same things. But I reiterate, there are definitely lots of deviations from this template. But if you do have a near-death experience, it will probably adhere to this template in some degree.
Okay.
To some degree. Unless you're one of those 33% that's going to hell, which we learned.
You're going to have a bad time.
Yeah, which we learned that. I mean, look, all I'm saying is 33% answered no to the did you have overwhelming positive experiences?
Yeah.
That means they maybe had neutral experiences. I'm just saying. Okay. Once we get the merch up, we'll have one called Not One of the 33%.
Yeah. Right. That doesn't have the same ring to it as Die With Your Backpack On.
Die With Your Backpack On. Contra Mundi, I think was one we liked.
Yep.
And then Please Buy My Kettlebell Named Julie.
$13,000 kettlebell. That's going to be a T-shirt.
I have a $13,000 kettlebell.
Right. Yes, it'll be like a Wayfair style listing. With a kettlebell for $13,000. Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. We designed a lot of merch on this show.
Yeah, the Golden Circle.
Yep.
The merch was just flowing. Let the merch flow like milk and honey.
That will fund the reestablishment of the Knights of the Golden Circle.
And our conquest of the Caribbean.
We will unite with our Caribbean and Mexican brothers to form a glorious new civilization.
What's the major religion in the southeastern U.S.? Is it Southern Baptist?
Yeah.
Okay, we will found a new Southern Baptist Rasta religion.
Excellent.
That will also include Santa Muerte for our Hispanics.
I'll have my Jamaican friend on the show and ask him if he'll
all die with our backpacks on.
Participate. There we go. All right, we'll die with your backpack on, everybody.
Okay. Bye-bye. I'm getting some Ritz crackers. Oh, they're peanut butter. I was hoping they were cheese.
Are you having a snack?
Yeah, I'm disappointed though. I was wanting the cheese Ritz crackers, but these are peanut butter. Now I don't want them.
Sorry.